Welcome to Monk's Tape.
Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Jeff Dooley, the Hartford Yard Goats, a AA affiliate of the Colorado Rockies, play-by-play announcer. You hold many titles there. Can you just talk about those titles and your role with the Yard Goats a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the director of broadcasting and media relations with the team. And at minor league baseball, you wear so many different hats. And my job actually changes completely during the off season as opposed to the baseball season. During the winter months, I'm basically a salesperson. So I help on our sponsorship team, securing the advertising for the billboards and the promotions on the field, and going out there and trying to connecting businesses with our club and doing speaking engagements and things like that. And then as we get into the summer months, once the season rolls around, head to spring training for, a week or so and get ready for baseball. And then obviously it's all media relations and broadcasting during the course of the season. So there's a little bit of both. It's definitely a grind. It's more of a lifestyle really, and as opposed to just a job where you just go in and you're working 9 to 5. And in sports, as you know, there are no holidays where you're off and weekends and things like. I mean, you're basically always playing. So that's fun. And I also get broadcasting fixed in the off season. During the winter months, I do college basketball at the University of Hartford. I've done that for a long, long time. And for a couple of years, my broadcast partner was Casey Jones, the Celtics Hall of Famer. So that was a big thrill for me to share the booth with KC. So it's broadcasting first, and kind of the other stuff secondary.
So you graduated from St. Joe's in 1995. That campus has changed quite a bit since then, and we've added. We probably have about twice as many sports now as we did then. And I know you were involved in athletics. You're a communications major here, and you did some broadcasts at the radio station on campus. Is that right?
Yeah. We had a wonderful station. We called it B91, but it was WSJB radio and 91.5. And that's where a lot of us got our start in the communications field at St. Joe's.
No, it was really disappointing for me personally when the communications major went away, but even more so, I think, when the radio station went away, right when I first got here, early 2000s, that license lapsed. And I know that was such a great thing. You're right, for the communications majors. And, just talk about that experience. I know that the field has evolved in so many ways, technology and constantly updating. But talk about that, what it was like broadcasting games here at St. Joe's.
It was my first taste of it. And that's the reason I picked St. Joseph's College, was a chance as a freshman to go in and broadcast. And I did get really lucky. I went in there, and I remember I went to a station meeting my first year, and the radio station had great pride. There was just great leadership from the general manager and the programming director. And it was, Bill Yates ran the communications department, and I think put some good leadership students in important roles. And I got that sense of pride immediately when we got in. And I love the fact that I could, basically have a radio show my freshman year. So ended up doing a show called Inside the World of Sports, which was Sunday nights, and it was a lot of fun. And we'd go around, interview college athletes, professional athletes, basically based in New England. And I would give updates and scores. And that was kind of my first taste of broadcasting. And then had a great opportunity I know the sports at St. Joe's have always been outstanding. And I had a great opportunity my sophomore year. Rick Simons, who was the basketball coach at the time, actually signed a commercial radio deal with a station in Portland, WLPZ, and hired a professional broadcaster that had done broadcast work before as the play-by-play person, and hired me basically as an intern / color commentator. So that's when I realized that, okay, it's not college radio anymore, it's commercial radio. 30 seconds now has to be 30 seconds because sponsors are paying for their ads. You can't make it 28 seconds, it can't be 35 seconds. And I really learned a lot. I work with Dan Morin, who, I still keep in touch with now. And I learned a lot with him. And obviously you learn just by getting reps on the air. So when I became sports director at the campus station, I made sure that all of our games got broadcasted, whether it was men's, women's basketball, whether it was the soccer, whether it was the the softball games. We want to make sure that everybody had a chance to do broadcast. And we would basically alternate. Someone would do play-by-play, and another person would do color commentary. Someone would be back at WSJB running the board. But we took great pride in that. And it was really fun because the teams are so competitive. The baseball team was great. The basketball team was outstanding. And back then, you had to actually run phone lines to the venue. So I remember getting up one morning at 6 a.m. because it was a baseball doubleheader. And I ran a phone line, myself and my friends that were in the broadcasting department, we were in a line all the way from like where the old Chamber of Horrors building was, the old basketball gym, because they had phone lines in there all the way out to the baseball field. So we had to get, a few hundred feet of line, and it's probably more than 500 feet now that I think about it. But that was a great time. And that's when I really realized that I wanted to pursue a career in broadcasting.
Well, that's really cool. And a lot of that sounds familiar even today. We live stream all of our games. And, even though we don't have that major anymore, we have student workers and interns in the sports information office that really take pride in doing a great job on the play-by-play on the web stream. And we've had some really good ones come through the doors, some that really prepare and take it seriously. So that's pretty cool. But we've gone through the ringer as far as, all this technology and all these things that work and don't work. But I think we're in a good place. We have a really good setup out of baseball with multiple cameras and all that. So we're kind of continuing that tradition in a different way, or we're trying to. So you said, you knew you wanted to work in sports broadcasting. When you got here, you got that opportunity. Are there still aspects of, when you first started, I imagine there are, that you still today enjoy the most about your job?
Yeah, I think, Corey, the broadcast itself, there's a lot of, side stuff that we all do, but I think when the broadcast kicks off, that's when I'm in my happy place. That's when, the lights are on, the first pitch is thrown, or the ball is tipped in basketball. That's when that's when I'm the happiest. I love to broadcast. There are a lot of other things that come with it. Obviously, professional baseball, there's a lot of travel. I think I liked the travel a lot more when I was a little bit younger, going to the different cities, and, the players are a lot closer to my age then. Now I don't mind it. I don't love it, but I still love when the first pitch is thrown and the baseball game is on, whether it's doing a game at Dunkin' Donuts Park, which is a beautiful setup, in downtown Hartford, or whether it's, at Hadlock Field in Portland, Maine, where I'm playing the Sea Dogs, which is always fun because all my college buddies come out. We do kind of a reunion. And that's always a fun time as well. But I would say that's number one. The passion is when that light goes on and it's time for baseball, and you're out there describing the action to our listeners. That's what means the most to me.
So would you say that travel is the most difficult aspect for you at this point, or what are some other things that are challenges?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I have a son that's in college now that plays college baseball, and one that's in high school. So, they've grown up around it. So they've got some pretty cool opportunities as well, where they've traveled with us. They've taken batting practice with our team since they could walk, So, there's definitely some positives, but there's also a lot of time away, missing their games, missing some school activities and things like that. So, I think it comes with the territory. That's definitely one of the more challenging things for sure is, being the time away and, having that dedication with your family.
So kind of turning the page back a little bit, what were some of the best memories that you had for broadcasting games here? I imagine the Chamber of Horrors, the old gym was a great memory. And talk about some of those memories that you have.
Yeah, just great memories. The teams were always competitive. This class before me, the class that graduated in '94, this is amazing to me, never saw the St. Joe's Monks lose a home game. They had the longest winning streak in the country. We actually lost my senior year to the rival Huston Braves, which, that's still a bad word in my language. But they went 4 years without seeing a home loss. It was always a competitive team. I don't know how Rick did it, but he always got talented players. There were a couple of colleges that actually would not play games in the Chamber of Horrors. And I tell people all the time, if you actually didn't get in to the, like, if you weren't in the gym but like halftime of the women's game, like you might not get into a men's game. It was that crowd. I mean, you had your college students, but you also had the community people that came out as well, because, you know, obviously the only other basketball really, Division I level is a couple hours north up at the University of Maine. So everyone kind of flocked to St. Joe's games. They were really competitive, and they were going to the tournament every year. So to me, that was one of the great things was watching that team just kind of be competitive every year. And at one point, that 50-game win streak was the longest active win streak in the country with the University of Indiana. So they were kind of going back and forth. Obviously, two different levels, but still, it's pretty impressive, you know, what they do. And to watch the players come through there, and, you know, there was actually a kid that's from Connecticut, Steve Schuler, who was one of the more dynamic players that I'd seen. John Wassenberg had a great career when I was there. I got a chance to call his games for a couple of years. That was a lot of fun. They brought this, when we signed the commercial radio deal, the first couple of years, we actually did games like in the stands with the fans. We'd, you know, go in, set up the phone line, and we'd have a little booth, but there'd be, you know, my stat guy maybe to the right, and then it was just all fans surrounding you. When we were able to sign that commercial deal, we had to bring in a little bit more bigger equipment. So I remember we put up staging, and I would actually have to climb the staging to get to the top, and all my friends would try to get in early to see if I was going to make it to the top or if I was going to fall. You know, the big thing is Dooley going to make it up there today? And, you know, when the place would shake, the arena would shake, you could feel like the trembling up in the staging. But I always said, like, that to me was still some of the great college basketball. I mean, I've done games at Rupp Arena in Kentucky. I've done games at KFC Yum Center in Louisville. And, you know, some of the better college basketball venues in the country. And I always said, like, the Chamber of Horrors, to me, still was the loudest it's ever been. I mean, I'm doing a game at Rupp Arena with 30,000 people, and I still think that because of the acoustics and because of the small venue, you would go out of bounds at the Chamber along the baseline, and you were going to run into a Monks fan sitting there that's probably going to give you a shove back onto the court as an opposing player. So it was a lot of fun, and that's really where I got my love, I think, for college basketball at St. Joe's.
And I think, well, I know, you know, Rick Simons was obviously a big part of that, not only bringing in great players, but he was a showman himself. He was very good at promoting games and making that locale into what it was.
He was outstanding. And you need someone, I think, with that vision to understand that, listen, it's about winning. Everyone loves a winner. It's easy to root for someone that is successful. But that being said, to understand the other dynamics behind the piece, he knew it was important to get the games on radio. I'm sure if he was there right now, they'd have a television deal. I mean, that was his way. He felt that we need to get the product to the fans, and I think he was really ahead of the curve with some of that stuff. I do. And we had a segment in the pregame show called Simon Says, and I would interview him every day. And once in a while, he'd throw a curveball to make sure I was on my game, but I did. I learned so much from him, and he was just obviously so successful coaching college basketball at that level. But he really saw that vision, I think, for the whole thing. And obviously, it helped the recruiting. I mean, nowadays, it's different, obviously, with all the television deals that you get. But back then, I mean, it was kind of cool to tell a recruit, like, hey, all your games are on the radio. Your family's going to be able to listen to your games, you know? And I mean, obviously, now there's just the way that the whole industry has changed, that, you know, like you said, now you can watch all the baseball games, all the basketball games online. I mean, it's really cool. And being a parent of a college athlete now, it's awesome. You get to watch all the video games, the video of the games you can't make. So it's really, really a cool aspect of the whole thing.
Definitely. And I often say that, you know, Rick is really he's one of the people that definitely put St. Joe's on the map. I don't think there's any doubt about that, with, you know, all the attention he got for that basketball program, and as the athletic director and some of the vision that he had, no doubt about it. So who would you say that you're influenced by, like, and you've been doing this for a long time, so many people are probably influenced by you now, younger broadcasters coming into the field. But who would you say growing up and coming into the profession you kind of tried to maybe emulate or looked up to?
I think when I seriously got involved, and I always loved Bob Costas, listening to Bob, you know, because he would do the World Series every year, so you get a chance to see him. And, you know, growing up in Rhode Island and you know, being so close to Boston and going to Red Sox games, Sean McDonough was certainly a favorite. And then, you know, realizing that, okay, I better kind of get involved in the radio stuff. Then I really listened a lot to Joe Castiglione, who's still the voice of the Red Sox on radio. And, you know, Joe was doing games like back when I was in high school, and he's still there now. So listening to him through college, you know, was pretty cool. So I think those are the three of the guys that kind of right off the top. I mean, the great thing now about all the MLB packages and the audio is that you can now listen to everybody. I mean, you couldn't do that before, you know. Now it's changed. You can basically, you know, if you want to listen to, you know, a Seattle Mariners game, you just click a button and you get it. I mean, it's really, really cool. So I like to go around and move through the radio now and you know, listen to different broadcasters. I think it's a lot of fun.
There's just something about baseball on the radio. You know, I don't know that younger fans see that. Hopefully their parents and grandparents are kind of passing that along. We try to do that when we have our games on video. You know, you're not sitting there staring at a screen. You try to set the stage, and when your voice raises, oh, that's time to pay attention.
Right.
But you know, something about baseball on the radio is just special.
It is, and I hear that from fans, and it's so great when they say, you know, we had you on a barbecue or out in the boat, you know, going down the Connecticut River, and you know, had the Yard Goats game on, and you know, and they just like, maybe they're not listening to every pitch, but they're like, it's so cool to have baseball on the background at a cookout where you've got the game, you just hear the crowd behind you, and you know, you're doing something else, having burgers, a couple of drinks, and you've got the game, and like you said, and then you might want to pay attention. You hear the broadcaster, you know, rise up like someone just hit a 2-run home run. Oh, what's going on? What inning is it? And things like that. So that's what you try to do as a broadcaster, especially on radio, is to bring that listener into the ballpark and describe, you know, exactly what you're saying. You know, I get kidded a lot because I talk about the uniform colors, because I do get some emails from blind folks that listen to me, and they're like, we love it when you describe what's happening. A couple of them said they've never been able to see. A couple of them have lost sight over the years, and they're like, it means a lot when you're talking about exactly what you're saying, because you don't just assume that we know what the guys are wearing. Especially nowadays when, you know, major league teams and minor league teams each have like 10 uniforms. So there's a whole bunch of different ones you can talk about. But I think it's important to describe, particularly on the radio, what you're seeing, and, you know, if the ball is hit, where exactly it's hit, and what exactly that defender is doing to make the play, if he made the play, or if he missed it, if he came close to making it.
Well, I think with minor league baseball, it's definitely a different challenge. You know, if you're listening to the Red Sox on the radio, obviously the Red Sox, those players are there for a year or a few years. With minor leagues, it's almost a rotating roster, and I think people are listening more so to hear you and your partner than they are maybe, you know, I don't know how many Rockies fans there are in Connecticut, probably more now than there were when the Twins were in town.
Right.
But you know, the Sea Dogs definitely have the advantage of having the New England team as their parent club. But I really think I listened in for probably 3-4 innings last night, and I could definitely see why and see how you've been doing it for so long, and you really are terrific at your job. And I mean, I don't need to tell you that. You know, you've won so many awards and all those things. But it's really a unique thing, minor league baseball, I think, where people are tuning in to listen to you specifically, and maybe, you know, obviously the game is part of it too.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's nice of you to say. Yeah, I mean, we try to, and Dan and I have been together we just kind of feed off each other. I didn't even realize this. We've been together now for 18 years doing games.
Oh my God.
Yeah, going way back to the Rockhats days, and obviously right through Hartford. And he's the absolute best. I mean, he's so talented. Dan is so good at what he does. He reads about 10 newspapers a day. I mean, you can't get any. He knows everything. So he's just a great resource. And he does his job too. He's talking to our coaches. He's talking to our players. And, you know, we try to, all these athletes, Corey, by the time they get to the AA level, they've all been, you know, they've been the best player in the high school team, right? The best player in the college team. Then they get an A ball. And, you know, so many kids like get weeded out. But as you get up to AA, now you've got a chance, as they call it, a big boys league. And now you're basically a phone call away from the big leagues. So we had 4 players on last year's club go to the Rockies, which, you know, for a AA team was pretty impressive. And we've added a couple of more this year that started this season at AAA that have gone to the big leagues for the first time. So yeah, you try to, bring the sense of the player's story, because you get so many statistics now. To me, it's almost like a crush for a broadcaster. I mean, you can sit there and talk about how he does against righties or lefties because all the information's in front of you. But, I think it's more important to talk about that we had Coco Montes a couple of years ago. His grandfather actually moved from Cuba and moved to Hartford, Connecticut. And here's his grandson actually playing for the Yard Goats. And I was like, this is an unbelievable story. So I think bringing that piece out or bringing these players to life is the important thing. We've got a lot of families that listen to the games too. So although we'll be critical at times, I think it's more important to, try to play them up as opposed to knock them down. And, obviously it's a long season too. So every guy's going to go up there and have his day where he gets his 4 hits and is reading, on the headlines. And then a guy's going to have a day where he goes 0 for 5 or the pitcher really struggles and doesn't make it 3 innings of the game. So, we're cognizant too of who's listening to the games. And, we don't want to get that email from mom or dad saying, don't say that about my son. But it's, you try to be fair as best as you can. And, sometimes it's challenging and other times it's not. But for the most part, we try to bring the players to life if we can on a broadcast.
You mentioned, all of these things that are now available, the information overload of analytics. There's radar guns, obviously, and have been for years everywhere in the ballpark, pitch clocks, and you get into exit velocity and launch angle and all of this stuff, and spray charts. And all those things have, maybe not all of them, but a lot of that's been in the last 3-4 years where this stuff is coming to light. You watch a broadcast now, and you're seeing graphics of launch angles, and that was hit 115 miles off the bat, or hit miles per hour off the bat. Talk about that and how the game is changing constantly with some of those statistical parts.
Yeah, very similar to the normal stats that you get. You've got everything now. So I've got a computer in front of me that's got half the stuff I don't even know what it means, like the spike of the pitch and the angles and things like that. I could read it off that and sound intelligent, but I'm not going to. You can get caught up in all that stuff. I'll talk to our coaches about the stuff that hey, what is information, because they kind of dumb the information down for different pitchers, different players, because it can be an overload of information for our players as well. So like on our broadcast, we don't go a lot into that. Like if a guy hits a home run and it's 120 miles an hour off the bat, obviously we're going to talk about that. If a guy hits a ball 460 feet, completely out of Duncan Park, we're going to mention it on the broadcast. But if it's something that's average, if it's a home run that was hit 96 miles an hour off the bat, that went 330 feet, we're probably not going to mention anything. Maybe if it's our guy, we might tease it up a little bit and say, wow, that was hit hard, and kind of back it up with numbers. But you can get caught up in all that stuff. I think a little of that is more for television, where they have the broadcasters almost try to educate the fans about that, and they're showing the graphics on the screen. We're not doing that, obviously, on the radio side, so I don't think it's really meant to talk about, I guess, right now, all the other stuff. But you're right, there's just so many analytics, and some people get caught up on all that, the launch angle and things like that. But I think if we just describe kind of what we're seeing, and the ball was a line drive or it was a high towering shot where it went, I think that's what fans really need to know or want to know, as opposed to launch angles. And I have gotten emails from fans saying, listeners, that, please don't start talking about all this analytics stuff and things like that. So, on the radio side, we're definitely not there yet. I don't think right now there's a piece for our broadcast. Again, that being said, if there's numbers that are impressive off the charts, we'll definitely mention that during the game. We don't want to cheat our listeners if a guy hits a ball 480 feet.
Yeah, I think most people have seen, been around baseball, understand what a lofted fly ball looks like. I don't know what a launch angle percentage looks like.
Right.
Maybe that's coming, but I don't know. I hope not. So going back to the beginning of your time in the minor league baseball realm, you have an interesting story from what I've read online, a couple of features that were about you. Your first broadcasting gig and starting off with the New Britain Rockcats. Can you just kind of go into that? Like when you graduated college, where did you go from there and how did you get into this?
Yeah, so I graduated from St. Joe's in 95 and went back home to Rhode Island, and I was looking for the full-time job and actually put together a radio contract with Bryant University. It was Bryant College at the time. They were a Division II team, the Northeast Conference. And I had told them, I said, listen, I did games and helped coordinate the broadcast at St. Joe's. Would you be interested in doing some radio? I actually reached out to Brown University, which was a D1 team in the Ivy League first, and they were kind of like, well, we're not really set up for it this year. So I said, all right, well, I'm going to go get a Division II team on the air. So I got Bryant College on the air and did their games, and it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. And then year two, Brown actually reached out to me and said, hey, we're actually putting together this radio contract now. Would you be interested in doing a package of games with John Wallach, who's like a big wig in Boston now in WEI, and the Sports Hub he's on as well. And so we did men's and women's basketball. We did ice hockey as well. We did the hockey games. So that was a lot of fun. It was a schedule of about 40 games. And that being said, I did the Bryant games as well. So I was really kind of doing the broadcasting fix. And then at the time, I was also working for the Red Sox AAA team in Pawtucket. That was kind of like my full-time job, doing sales and stuff in the off season. And then I did a weekly show for them. And then in 97, I just visited kind of as a fan to New Britain and really liked the ballpark. And I was like, wow, this is amazing that they don't have a radio deal. And went down to talk to the general manager. And I said, listen, I have some experience putting together radio contracts. Could we talk? And sure enough, put together the radio contract for the Rockcats and essentially created a full-time job for myself, Corey. The way it worked was I said, okay, now you've got the radio. I think the radio station thought I worked for the team, and the team thought I was at first with the radio station. We kind of put everything together. And next thing you know, I said, listen, I think I can be of value to you guys. I've done some sponsorship sales before in Pawtucket with the Red Sox. And, they called them and said, yeah, no, Jeff checks out. I think he would be a good addition. So that's kind of how I got my start and got with that franchise. And then that franchise was sold the next year. And this was really interesting. So 98 was a great year. Doug McKay got the ball in the Red Sox, won the World Series baseman. He was our first baseman that year. I think we had 14 or 15 major league guys on that team. It was an unbelievable. Torrey Hunter was our center fielder. AJ Brzezinski was our catcher. Really talented group that year. And that's when, I went in thinking that I knew a lot about baseball. And that's when you realize you don't know as much as you think when you're around these guys that, they've forgotten more than I'll ever know. And I got a chance to, do that for the first 2 years. And then we actually lost our radio contract with the station was sold. And now I'm thinking, oh boy, what am I going to do? I'm going to go out there because, now it's different. This was like before the internet. Now you could just get an internet deal or do something on YouTube, where back then you actually needed to get a radio station. So I approached the Spanish radio station. I still said it was my best sales job ever. And the games, I told them, I said, it was a Spanish radio station, but I said, obviously I don't speak Spanish. I'm going to do the games in English, but what we'll do is we can tease it. And we can have our sponsors get Spanish broadcasting spots during the daytime programming, and then they'll get a radio spot at night. So they agreed somehow to do it, and we did our games on a Spanish station during that second year. And then ownership had changed, and we got a really good group that came in that spent a lot of money and got us on a really big station in Hartford. And that's when it kind of boosted, kind of our place in the market. Attendance really increased. And that I was with that group until they sold, I think, in 2012. And with I'm with my third ownership group now, which is phenomenal. And it was kind of like the running joke. It's like, oh, you can buy the team, but the broadcaster comes with it, because I've been with 3 different teams. So I've been very fortunate. I have. I've been with somebody that, obviously, the broadcast piece is really important to them. I mean, we do pretty well in terms of selling the product, and now there's just so many other avenues to it with all the games streamed on MLB television. So there's other source of revenue as well. So I've been very fortunate being here, but that's kind of the story and how I got here.
That's crazy. I don't know that people would do all of that now. It's certainly a different world, like you've said. But
yeah, and it's a great point. And I tell folks that come here and work in my media relations department, that I tell them kind of what I did. And it's a great point, Corey. When I did the Bryant games the first year, I didn't get paid. And I was fortunate enough where I was living at home and it was a few games. But I look back, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here. There's just no way I'd be here right now, because I went to the radio station and I knew it was going to cost some money to do the games, to basically buy the airtime. And I knew the school would have to sell some spots to cover it. So, and I think both thought I was getting a piece, and I really wasn't, because when I went back to the radio station next year, I said, I'm going to have to get something this year. I said, and they're like, wait, you didn't get paid last year? I said, no. I said, that's fine. That's fine, because we launched it, but it was successful, and now we're moving forward. And they kind of felt bad. I said, you're absolutely going to get paid. So, but that first year I didn't, and I did those whatever amount of games it was. So it is a great point. I always say, like, just have a passion. You have to be able to, like, just run through any door. You have to knock on the doors, and you're going to hear no 10 times, but all it takes is one person. I tell young broadcasters this all the time. It only takes one person to say yes. I mean, 100 people could say no, but it just takes one to give you a shot, and then you kind of then it's up to you. Now you have to work your tail off. You have to get a good reputation, and you have to improve on your craft. But some of these kids just need someone to say yes at first. And I tell them, just don't take no for an answer, and I think looking back, that's what I did. I had such a passion for broadcasting, and I had passion for baseball too, but I think it was really just broadcasting that I was willing to do that. I mean, Connecticut was only 2 hours from where I grew up, so it wasn't like I was moving to California. But that being said, it was a challenge. You don't know the market. You don't know, how it's going to turn out, if you're going to dig too deep and, get over your head. But it was a challenge that for me was worth taking, because I wanted so badly to be a broadcaster.
Those are great points. And I think a lot of people don't think about paying your dues as something that is paid back in the long run, and the contacts you make and the people that you impress along the way can really open doors for you. With that being said, I mean, you've worked in many different spots. Bryant, Brown, Central Connecticut, the Pawtucket Red Sox, WDRC, AM, FM, New Hartford, Hartford Yard Goats, New Britain Rockcast before that. Have you called, predominantly you've called baseball, and you've done a lot of basketball. But what are some other sports? You mentioned hockey. Are there some sports that you've called that that are kind of on the outer rim of your knowledge?
Not really. I've done some high school football. Nothing really. I've had a couple of college teams reach out. I did sideline 1 year, a handful of games. I filled in for UConn, so that was cool. We went down to Vanderbilt and West Virginia, so I got to do some sideline stuff for that, and work with a guy, Jody Ambrosio, who I grew up, kind of listening to when I moved to Connecticut. He was, he was the longtime voice of the Huskies and a big ESPN guy. So that was really cool to work with Joe. He's actually become a really good friend over the years. But I've been asked to do play-by-play for a couple of colleges in the fall, but the fall is kind of my season where I'm like, no, I owe it to my family to spend time with, because the summer is insane, and obviously the winter months doing the college basketball. For years, I traveled with the University of Hartford. About 5 or 6 years ago, they flipped everything to television, to ESPN Plus brand. So I didn't travel. I did all the men's and women's games for about a 10-year stretch. I just traveled and only did the men's games. We did all the games on the radio. So for the fall, it was more like, you know what, I need that time to relax. And I didn't want to go in not doing a really lot of homework and a good job. So I've said no to those opportunities. But yeah, I've done high school football back in Rhode Island. I've done some hockey. I filled in for the Portland Pirates, did color commentary back in the day. My old college roommate, Greg Post, was a PR guy for both the Bruins and the Pirates. And he asked me if I would do some color commentary. So I filled in for a couple of games. But mainly those are the sports. I mean, I've never done anything like the volleyball or, soccer or, lacrosse or anything like that. And I tell young broadcasters, because I get a lot of emails about, hey, Jeff, do you know anybody that we have a game this weekend? So I tell people, listen, everyone wants to do the baseball and the football and the basketball, but I'm like, do swimming. So I have a friend of mine that does that. He did like the regatta in Boston. I'm thinking, how do you do this? And he's like, well, it's not as hard as you think. You just got to kind of follow the extra. I'm like, and don't fall out of the boat that you're in. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. but it's there's just so many other sports, and there's so many ways you can, with digital media that you could get that event to the listeners or the viewers now. That's the number one thing I tell kids. I'm like, listen, get your work in with your baseball, football, and basketball. That's the dream. But you might actually get your start doing lacrosse games or doing volleyball games, doing track meets. And don't poo-poo that, because that might be a great opportunity where you get in the door at a college, and the next thing you know, you're filling in doing a basketball game, and then you're kind of writing your own history.
Yeah, so many of the schools that we play don't have a play-by-play person on their video. It's just silence. And that to me is really, it's really difficult to watch.
Yeah,
you don't get that.
It's a great opportunity for college kids. I just don't know why someone wouldn't just go in there, and that's the only way you get better too, is get reps. And I'll have kids that are college seniors reaching out and, hey, Jeff, I want to be a broadcaster. Do you have any suggestions? And I feel like saying, like, you should have thought of that like 3 years ago and done some stuff in college because it's all about reps. I mean, you're going against someone that, is more comfortable on the air, is going to sound better just because he's done it or she's done it longer. So the best thing you can do is get out there and do it, and when people ask me, like, do you have any suggestions? Well, I want to be a baseball broadcaster. And I'll say, why? Well, because I love watching the Red Sox. Well, it's a little bit different, watching a game and having a soda than actually doing the game. I said, all right, we'll turn down the sound and broadcast the game off the television, because that's how you get better. I tell the kids, it doesn't matter if you're doing a Little League game, sitting at Duncan Park at a Yard Goats game, or sitting at Fenway Park or Yankee Stadium with a tape recorder or your phone recording yourself. If you're doing a broadcast, you're doing a broadcast, and that's how you get better. Like anything else, it's a skill, and with time, you improve that craft.
Yeah, I've always viewed our athletic department, the teams that we work with here, as almost kind of our own little laboratory. We have our media days where we're always doing different things and trying to raise the bar and giving better broadcasts and meet the monks videos and all these kinds of things that give kids, students opportunities to do something different.
I look back at our radio station. We had so many talent. I mean, I wasn't even that good. I really wasn't. And we had so many talented guys that worked at ESPN. Jason Cloutier, Brian Foley in Boston at WBZ. He's been there for years. Brian Fabry with the Boston. He covers the high school stuff for the Herald and the Globe. I mean, we've had just so many talented. J.M. Snickers, Jay Meridian, who's a news director at Fox down in Florida and Tampa. And I just look at, Steve Mondor, who was an on-air talent, Mark Curto, who was a big guy in Portland. He was on Portland radio for a while, and he runs some stuff in the city now. Just so many talents. And I look back and I'm like, wow, it was just unbelievable. Matt Berry, who does a big Bruins podcast now. I mean, we really had a good group of folks that I think I mentioned really took pride in the radio station and taking to that next level. We would kind of push each other. We really would. It was really, really a cool thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And for a small school like St. Joe's to have all those people that end up at or near the top of their field is really unique. So you've been in this field, the minor league baseball broadcasting realm for 25 years. First the Minnesota Twins as the New Britain Rodcats, and then on to later now the Hartford Yard Goats. Now, what was that transition like for you? You said that you buy the team, you get the broadcasters. That's part of the package deal. But was that something that was in the works, switching affiliations? Did you know that was coming well in advance, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, I mean, we didn't know. We knew we were moving to Hartford. We announced the move to Hartford, and I think it was 2004 14 when we knew that basically we're going to get the ballpark approved to move downtown. And it was kind of crazy. There were a lot of people it was a huge news story in Connecticut, really in New England, because how could the Yard Goats do this? And, we had a lot of upset fans. And I would try to explain to them, I said, guys, we're not moving 45 minutes. We're moving 10 minutes to an unbelievable ballpark. Like, this is like the major leagues of the Eastern League. Like, it's, and Duncan Park, it's a 360 ballpark. It's double decked. It's won ballpark of the year, best in the country, like for the last 5 years. Up for it again. I think we're down to the Sweet 16, the voting this year. But I tell people, I said, you're a baseball fan. Why wouldn't you want to enjoy baseball in the best ballpark in the country? I travel. I see some of these ballparks. And nothing against New Britain Stadium. I worked 18 years in New Britain. I loved every single day. But this is like the major leagues. It really is. And, people have seen it on television. They've seen it in the newspaper. But I always love when people walk in for the first time, because they look around and they're like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Especially our players that come in for the first time, because they're like, oh, wow, we're not in Spokane anymore. This is not A-ball. This is pretty cool. So that was the first piece, was getting the fans to kind of like, well, it's not going to work. It's, I won't go to Hartford to watch a game. And I'm like, well, you go to Hartford to watch UConn. They sell out 16,000 fans every game, and the Wolfpack were in Hartford. Why would you go in the summertime to watch a baseball game? And obviously that turned out to be false, because we broke, all the attendance records like year one. It's actually been better than I thought it would be. I thought it would be good, but I never thought we would have 51 sellouts like we did back in 2019. I mean, it's still really cool. It's kind of like the toast of the town, which is fun. You want to kind of be that. And we always tell like our people that we're selling fun. I mean, there's a lot of jobs out there where, sales jobs where, you might not get that reward, but to see people come in and escape from maybe the realities of life for a couple of hours where they can just escape at a Yard Goats game and have fun with their family, it's awesome. And you see that people just come and they're smiling, and people are here having a good time. And you know what? Last night we lost 14-1, as you know. I mean, it wasn't a great game, but the kids that got their first couple of thousand kids came in, they got a T-shirt. They got to see the live goats in the pen out in center field. So there really is something for everybody, at the minor league side. But getting back to the Twins, yeah, that was a tough one, because the Twins were all that I knew. I was really close to a lot of their players, their coaches, their general manager, their assistant general manager. And I remember when I called them because we weren't hearing back, and I made the phone call to the assistant general manager, and I said, what's happening? And that's kind of when they said that, yeah, we're not going to renew with you guys. And I was like, oh wow, this is crazy, like all the stuff we went through in New Britain with the field conditions and things like that, and you're going to let some other organization come in and and swoop into this beautiful ballpark and this and that. And so they said, yeah, let's see what happens. And sure enough, we had a conference call with a couple of teams, and we met with the Rockies, and they kind of had the same values as us. I mean, our community stuff, Corey, is so important. It's important for us to have our players out in the community as role models, to talk to kids, to kind of preach the baseball side, but also to it's important to stay in school, and some of the messages that we think is important. And the Rockies are like, yeah, all that stuff's important to us too. We want our guys doing that. And Jeff Bridich, who was the farm director at the time, a Harvard guy, so he'd been in the East Coast, knew about our organization. He was the farm director then, and then like after we signed a deal, he actually became the major league general manager right after that. So that was kind of cool. And it's been a marriage that's been made in heaven. I mean, they're wonderful. They've got an unbelievable complex. Their coaches are great. Their players are great. And I did get the phone call like a year later from the Twins saying, oh man, we mess up. So listen, it happens. But it's part of the game. It's part of the game. But it all, I think, happens for a reason. And they've been great partners, the Rockies.
Yeah, certainly a lot of factors into those decisions to change affiliations for that parent club. But it must have been also a challenge, because you mentioned before that you develop connections with the players, and you've done so much research, and it's basically a part of your life. You know who's going to come up next year, or you have a good idea of it. Um, Talk about that, like learning a whole new group of people, basically.
Yeah, it's a great question because it really did have more an effect on me than anyone else. I mean, I think for a lot of the other folks that are selling the tickets and things like that, it probably didn't. They didn't have those relationships. My relationships were really deep, just knowing the whole organization, as I mentioned, from the front office personnel to the players, to the trainers. I mean, they were not only like, almost like co-workers, but they were like extended family. I mean, you spending hours and hours with them. And some of them were upset too, that it's a business and stuff happens. But I did have to learn a whole new organization. And like even in spring training for 10 and 12 years, I would go to Fort Myers every year,
Yeah.
That's where the Twins were, on the other side of it, where the Red Sox are. And now I'm going out to Scottsdale. So I'm thinking, all right, I got to learn a whole new organization. Let me get out to spring training. So I get out there, and it was the first day, and I'm walking around, and I hear, "Hey, Dooley," and I'm thinking, "Wait, I don't know anyone. I've never been to Scottsdale before. I know no one in the Rockies organization. Who is this?" And I turn around, and it's Justin Morneau, the former American League MVP, who I totally forgot had just signed with the Rockies in the offseason after finishing his career with the Twins.
Yeah.
And he's like, and we kind of looked at each other, and I went over, and he's like, "Oh my God." He's like, "I totally forgot that we signed the Rockies are now in Hartford." And I'm like, "Yeah, I forgot you signed with Colorado this offseason." So he's like, "Hey, come with me." So he actually brought me into the clubhouse. So like I got instant street credit, I think, with the players in that clubhouse walking in with Justin Morneau. So it was awesome. It was, and they've been great. They've been just everything that, you hope they would be, from the coaches to, our first manager, to the pitching coach, to the players. It's been awesome. But and once you get to know them too, and you can kind of tell their stories, it gets easier. That's one of the things I think as a broadcaster, when you're traveling with the team and getting to know the guys, I think stuff comes naturally. Some of the stories that you can bring out in the air because you're just around them so much.
And full disclosure, I'm from North Dakota originally, and the Twins were my team all the way through. And Justin Morneau was one of my favorites, in more recent years. And really, too bad a career that was sidelined by, some concussion issues and things like that. But man, he was a fun player to watch.
He was so great. And it was really cool because the last year in New Britain in 2015, he had an injury. He was coming back from an injury and he needed some at bat. So they said, "Listen, do you want to go to AA or AAA?" And he's like, "Well, where's AAA? Where's that?" And they said, "Well, AA's at home." And he said, "Oh, New Britain Stadium." He said, "Yeah, I would love to go there actually because I played there." So he could have taken the easy way out because Albuquerque was a lot closer to where the Rockies were playing. And he came, and it was so cool because it was our last, I want to say it was our last, I don't think it was our last game, but it was our last homestand ever in New Britain. And he came in, and it was almost like a piece of the past coming back. He is now back, and he's a rock star. He just won Major League home run hitting contest. He at Yankee Stadium, the last ever one at Yankee Stadium, and obviously was an MVP in the American League with the Twins, and basically that type of star player. And to come over, he was awesome. I remember my son's little league team was there that day, and I said, "Hey, Justin," I'm like, "Can you come out and talk to these kids?" And he's like, "Yeah, what time?" And he was just so gracious. He came out. The kids still talk about it today. They're all in college now. Like, "Oh my God, remember when Justin Morneau came out? One kid got his bat." Like, it was awesome. It was really, really cool. So it was so special for him to do that for our fans, kind of that last hurrah in New Britain. He was just a great guy. Still is.
Now, the big news for you this year, and certainly one of the pinnacles of your career, was getting that call to go and do the play-by-play for the Rockies against the Phillies a few games back in April. Talk about that, how that came about, what the call was like when you found out that was going to happen.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. And thanks for bringing it up. Obviously, the highlight of my career. You never know that you're going to get that phone call or the email. And for me, we were actually at our team dinner. Our ownership group was taking our players and the front office staff out to dinner. And I just finished, and I get my phone buzzes, and I get a message from Jerry Schemmel, who's the voice of the Rockies. And he's like, "Hey, Jeff, are you available for this weekend in Philly? We might need you to fill in for Jack Corrigan, the other voice of the Rockies, was going to be back for some his grandson's confirmation. So I was like, am I going to be around? Yeah, let me check my schedule, right? It's like, yeah. So I answered him as quick as I could. I said, yes, I will. You just tell me what time and where to be, and I'll be there. So it was unbelievable. Yeah. So I went down to Philadelphia for that series against the Phillies, did the Saturday, Sunday games. And, it was over the moon. It was just unbelievable. Both the Phillies and Rockies, just, it was everything that I hoped it would be. I got to the ballpark early that day because I wasn't sure how emotional I would be, just, finally getting there and seeing everybody. And, so I wanted to make sure, I kind of got that out of my system. And it was, got there and Jerry was awesome. He's like, listen, you're here for a reason. We've heard you. We like you. Just do your thing. And it just really relaxed me. And honestly, when the game started, the game is the same. I mean, obviously, all the names are rock star names. Everybody knows everybody's history because they're all the Rockies and Phillies. They're full of star power. But once that game, I kind of get into my comfort zone. And it was awesome. I wish they had won both games. I was down with manager Bud Black before the games, and he's like, "Wow, we lost the first one." He's like, "We better win the second one, or you're out of here." So, unfortunately, they lost the second one, but he said, "No, we still like you." So, it was a great couple of days with them, and I'm just so happy that got the opportunity to do it. Hopefully, I get another chance again.
Right, and those chances are few and far between, right? Like these openings don't come up very often. Broadcasters usually stick around for a long, long time.
Yeah, they do. I mean, it's the best of the best. The travel is, they all fly charter, so they're not going through airports. They just, and everything is top notch. I mean, people are asking me what was the funnest, and I said, well, besides, I guess being in a ballpark with 40,000 fans, it was really cool just to concentrate on the broadcast, not have to worry about anything. Not to worry. Listen, everyone wears different hats and many different hats. I understand that, but I just could focus. Like all you need to worry about is what you say, and when we call on you. So I had to do a little bit about the scouting on the starting pitchers, and then once the game started, I was doing color commentary and did 4 innings of play-by-play. But there was an executive producer behind me that was basically giving me the reads, kind of walking you through everything, in charge of the broadcast. There's people down in, back in Denver at KOA, the flagship radio station, worrying about the levels and making sure that, the spots go. So you're not hanging microphones like you are when you're in the minor leagues, setting up all your radio equipment. I mean, all that stuff is done for you. The only thing you worry about is doing the broadcast. So it was awesome. And to do it for an organization like the Rockies was just so special because I knew so many of the guys. So I went through the clubhouse before the game, and Ryan McMahon comes up to me and he's like, "Oh, Jules, you got to be great," and he's obviously the big star of the team now, and he's like, "Just do your thing, man. You're good. Just do your thing." And I'm thinking, you got to go out and face a guy throwing 97 miles an hour in 10 minutes, and you telling me to relax, But it was really cool. It was everything that I hoped it would be. It really was.
Now, tell me the story behind the bouncing pickles.
Yeah.
What the minor league teams are coming up with these things? It's so crazy.
Yeah, we're gonna be the bouncing pickles tonight. I was just asking our promotions person. I said, "Do I have to call them the bouncing pickles?" They're like, "Well, you do what you want," but I may do it for a couple of innings, and we'll see how it. Because on radio, people might be there. What are the bouncing pickles? So we'll describe the story. But apparently, there was one of those laws set into place years ago that a pickle needs to bounce in order to be sold. So if a pickle doesn't bounce, it's not really a pickle, and you can't sell it. Now, we heard this story, so we're like, oh, let's put together bouncing pickles. We play a game of the steamed cheeseburgers, all these silly things in minor league baseball. We do a Whalers Alumni Weekend, paying tribute to the former NHL franchise that played up the street, and we have hockey-style jerseys that we play in. So, and fans really dig the uniforms. It's a cool thing. The bouncing pickles one, it really is kind of funny. And they sold the hats, and they actually sold out of hats for when they went on sale. But I just found this out yesterday. We had an investigative reporter from NBC do a story on it, and I'm thinking, There's probably other things he could be investigating, but he's investigating a bouncing pickle story. So he did a really cool piece. You can Google it. It's on the internet. And he was dropping pickles at the ballpark. Really talented. Len Bessoff is his name. Really, really talented reporter. But he talked to a couple of people. And as it turns out, it really wasn't a law about that. It was just something that was kind of said like in the 50s, and it kind of carried on. But I don't think it was ever really a law in so that's what I learned from the investigative piece that Ben did the other night. But yeah, basically it's a pickle. We're going to play as the Bouncing Pickles tonight. So the uniforms will be green, and it should be a lot of fun.
That's really cool. So I know we've kind of circled it and talked about it a little bit during this podcast, but in closing, what kind of advice can you give in summation to aspiring broadcasters and people that are going into college or leaving college? And what should they do? Where should they start?
Well, just get out there and do it is the thing. Like I have a broadcasting internship with us, and I have for years actually. And I would say 90% of the kids that do it come in thinking they want to be the next on-air talent. And I would say half of them, maybe even more than half of them, leave saying that, oh, wow, you know what, Jeff? I love the behind the scenes stuff. I love getting audio from the players or the coaches and feeding it to the network. I love hitting the buttons. I love playing the commercials or playing the stuff. I have an intern now that we have all of our game highlights now on MLB television are cut with this program called Diamond. And they basically are sent at New York, but our guy can go into that. So it's basically every pitch of the game is sent to this computer stuff. So he can take our 3-run home run in the second inning, send it to a social media person, and like within real time, within a couple of minutes, that's out for the world to see. So like the whole industry is really changing, and that's more of a behind the scenes job. So that's again one of the reasons why I chose St. Joe's was I knew that I could get on the air my freshman year on the radio, and back then there was no internet, there was no podcasting. There's just so many avenues. You could be your own broadcaster. You can do a podcast and be your own media person. Right. So, but at the end of the day, play-by-play and game broadcast is play-by-play and game broadcast. You're not going to get a play-by-play job by submitting a demo of an interview or a podcast. You do that for a sports radio job, an afternoon drive show. So the best thing that you can do is get out there and do it. So I would say freshman year, go on there and just go and contact you, and say, listen, I want to, I tell kids this all the time. Just call the sports information. Say, is there anything you can do? You'll be shocked at how many people say, yeah, you know what? We might have an opening, do this. And the next thing you're doing, hey, listen, Johnny, can you do PA today? Our PA guy. You know how it is, Corey. Fill in here, do a stat thing. And you're building these relationships and you're getting to get to that next level. So I think that's the important thing is to contact sports information, and because college is just a great place to start. But don't stop. Try to do the summer leagues, do little league games. There are high school games that you can do. You can just broadcast on your phone now, put them on YouTube. And as a parent, the parents would love seeing their kids and hear their games of their kids. So there's just so many different avenues, but it's a skill. And it's the play-by-play, even the podcast stuff, the talk show stuff, it's a skill. And the only way to get better is to go out there and do it. So just I would say don't go in it because you love baseball, you love basketball. Do it because you want to broadcast and bring the games to people. And I think it's important to get out there and like anything else, just get better at it by doing it.
That's great. That's perfect. And it's certainly not a 9-to-5 job. It's probably more a 9 to midnight job.
And that's the thing too. Yeah, I mean, you definitely need a supportive family, and I would say the best time to get that, like I got really lucky, and I know that. I mean, I got a job, and Hartford market is a top 50, top 30 market in the country. So I tell kids you're probably not going to start in Hartford. I mean, I started in New Britain. We had a Hartford station. I got really lucky 25 years ago. But now you're going to have to go to Waco, Texas. You're going to have to go out to, Boise. You these small, and there's nothing wrong with that. And get your reps and then get better. And the next thing you know, then you can get the job in Minnesota or Boston or New York or LA. But you have to be willing to take chances. You have to be willing to take no, because you're going to hear no. Trust me, I hear it all the time. You're going to hear no more than you hear yes, but it just takes one person to like you and to bring you in, and then you have a career. So if you're passionate enough about it, but yeah, getting back to what you said about like, if you're someone that needs to be like, I can't tell you how many times I missed the Super Bowl, right? Because I had a college basketball game somewhere and I'm driving back, and you just miss it because you're not going head to head with the Super Bowl, but you're playing like in the pregame and leading up to it. So, games where I'm traveling with college basketball where I've always been lucky. I've been home for Christmas, but like New Year's, I've been away. I've gotten back Christmas Eve a couple of times. Thanksgiving, there are Thanksgiving tournaments. I was out in Vegas one year, not to complain, it was Vegas, but doing college basketball and for a tournament in Vegas on Thanksgiving. And then the summer, if you're in baseball, you play, I can tell you right now, you play every July 4th. You're going to get 3 days off for the All-Star break. But I can say this, like, if you have a passion for it, I go to work at a baseball park every day. You know what I mean? So, there are worse places to go. And, I have a passion for it and I love it, and obviously that got the juices flowing again during those couple of games of the Rockies this summer. Kind of, you relive everything then. And, you look back and like, wow, you know what, all those bus rides, all the sales calls, all that stuff was worth it for those 2 days in Philly for sure.
And then one day, you're in Scottsdale and you hear your name and you think, I don't know anybody who's here. And it's somebody that you've worked with many times.
You just never know. You never know who you're going to run to. And that's the best part of this is that the people that, people ask me and I love the passion. I love the radio, but the people that you meet, like, it's like a who's who fraternity, I just got off the phone yesterday with Steve Phillips, and I'm like, Steve Phillips, like, was the general manager of the New York Mets.
Yeah.
Why is he calling me? You know what I mean? So it's one of those things that you just, it's a closed circuit, and it really, you get to meet some really cool people in it as well. It really is cool.
That's awesome. Well, Jeff, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I really appreciate this. This lived up to its billing in my mind, because I've really enjoyed this conversation and talking with you and learning more about your path and what you're doing, and that it all started here at St. Joe's. That's very, very cool.
Well, I had fun. Thanks for having me. The place is really special to me. When we play in Portland, I try to get back there. I was there a few years ago with the family, and when I try to get over there, when I can. I know that the campus has changed a lot, but it's just it's a special place. It's where I got my start. So many great memories at St. Joe's, and I'll always be among. It was interesting this year. I got a phone call from the University of St. Joseph in West Hartford. And they called, their sports information reached out. And they said, hey, Jeff, can you fill in? Their broadcaster was sick. And I said, yeah, I think because they called a couple of times and it just hasn't worked on my schedule. But I was like, you know what? I can do this one. They're like, well, there's something that we should tell you. And I said, what? And they said, well, we're playing the St. Joe's Monks tonight, so you can't wear your monk stuff. And I was like, oh my God, what? You're playing the Monks? So I actually did the broadcast. Where it was really weird doing St. Joe's against St. Joe's for the playoff game this past winter. But it was fun. Get a chance to meet your coach, and and they mentioned that he brought me into the locker room. We talked for a little bit. So it's that connection certainly with the Monks for sure.
All right. Well, Jeff, thanks so much. Good luck tonight with the Bouncing Pickles promotion, and hopefully we'll catch up again someday soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Corey. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.